Good afternoon, everyone. We will be getting started shortly, but we do have some exciting announcements. We are having some technical difficulties. If you can just give us a few seconds, we'll get them squared away. All right, we'll be getting started shortly. We do have some announcements we want to make. Today, as a treat for Halloween, we will be giving away, if you purchase a 1-year account today, we're going to give you a 1-year additional. So buy one, get 1 year as our Halloween promotion. And stay tuned for our next webinar on November 20th. We will be going over the non-traditional lease, and that kind of covers things like renting out with a company, churches, co-signers, lots of roommates, just anything that would make your lease non-traditional. Also, please make sure that you have all of your questions ready because we will be doing a Q&A at the end. Hello. Please, introduce yourself in the chat box. Let us know your name, where you're coming from, how you heard about the webinar. Today, we're going to be going over thriving during the changing seasons. This webinar is really exciting because we're going to be going over those random things that you really don't think about, or things that your tenants might not think about and that you have to tell them, like pipes freezing or decorations. So today we have Elizabeth Colgrove with us, and she will be going over all of this information. Before we get started, I just have a few announcements. If you purchase today a 1-year account, we will give you a 1 year in return, and the promo code will be in the chat box. And we also have a link for our next webinar on November 28th at 1 p.m., and that is on the non-traditional lease. So we're going to get started, and remember, we have the Q&A at the end, and let's do this.
Hey all, it's Elizabeth here from Reluctant Landlord. I am super excited to get started and to talk to you about thriving during the changing seasons. So for many people, this is the, we're done, landlording's done, busy season's done. Why am I worrying about my house right now? Well, honestly, this is some of the most scariest season of landlording that exists, because in order to have a tenant paying your rent, you have to have a house that is ready to go. And so in order to make sure that it's habitable, it's all working, there's no leaks, there's no nothing, this is the season to make sure that all of the things are done so you don't have problems next season when it freezes. So let's get started. So 4 things that you want to think about in this season. First, there's maintenance, then weather, and then holiday decorations. Are you okay with Halloween? Are you okay with lights being put up on your house? What about holes? Can your house handle them? And then finally, gift giving. Should you give your tenant a gift? Let's get started. So maintenance. So this is one of the most important sentences, because yes, you have to spend money, but think of it as spend money to make money. Because if you don't take care of your items, the cost is way more expensive than it is later. For example, let's jump into the removing moss real quick. I know it's the last one on this item, but a $100 or $5 bottle of moss remover, of scraping off that moss, especially in like the Pacific Northwest where we were last season. That can cost you $5, and a new roof can cost you $10,000. So if you do not remove the moss off a roof up there, you literally will burn through a roof every 3 years. All because you saved on that $10 bottle of moss. So when we were looking for houses up there, I cannot tell you how many had this gorgeous green covering. And when I was talking to the realtor, she's like, yeah, it's because they didn't remove the moss. And I was like, wait, what? I'm a California girl. We don't do moss on roofs. I mean, heck, we're lucky if we get rain. So we were looking at it, and like that was a big thing, but people didn't know about that. That's why this season is so important. Are you closing your pool? Are you prepping your pool? What are you doing? For example, in Central California, it just gets to about 40 degrees where I live now. So I don't close my pools. We just leave them cold, put a little extra shock in them, and they're honestly open all year round, minus the fact that I wouldn't go swimming in 40-degree weather personally. But the problem that you run into, though, is like back east where I'm from and where I am right now in the DC, Pennsylvania, people actually empty the pools because you don't want it to freeze. You don't want it to crack. You don't want it to cause problems. So that's why it's so important to know your area. Are you like me or are you like back east? What works best for your pool? Are you talking to a pool guy? Yeah, it could cost $400 to drain it, or like I pay $550 when I have to drain and put new water in. But trust me, $550 is way better than a new liner. Don't ask me the cost of that because it's not $550. Then let's talk about plumbing. You know, we bought a brand new, I wish. We bought a 1920s house, and I got to learn a lot about plumbing. And I can tell you that replumbing a house is not cheap. So if you have a burst outlet all because your tenant didn't open that outside outlet, empty out the water, you could very well have a burst pipe in your house. So that's why you really, really, really want to make sure that you're going through all of these things, because no one wants a flooding in their house. Now let's talk about holiday decorations. I don't know about you, but my neighbors are already ready for Halloween tonight. I know my daughter can't wait to go out. Well, let's be honest, she's 6 months. I can't wait to take her out. But the thing, though, to keep in mind is that what if someone falls over it? What if they put a nail into your outside and it starts leaking? Like, are you okay with this? Do you want holes in your molding? Do you want overloaded electrical outlets? If they call you tonight in the middle of trick-or-treating saying the electricity isn't working, are you ready for that question because they overloaded? Do you know where to tell them to go to the fuse box and flip the fuse? Liability. If someone trips over it in your yard, who's liable? Like, this season is amazing. I have already purchased the pajama and the farm for my daughter for us to go. I mean, I love Thanksgiving, Christmas, Halloween. We are all set. But there's a lot of liability that comes along with this season, whether from like hanging up lights. For example, in one of our rentals, we left those ugly screws all up so that when they want to hang them up, they can just like literally hang them on the ugly nails and screws that are already up. A family member was very mad that I did not take them out, but I didn't want new holes in my house. I wanted the already existing holes to be left up. They're up. That's what they want to use. So this is the time of year to think about what you're okay with. And then make sure that if you are coming across stuff that you're making a note so you can put it in your lease. That's why we strongly emphasize you need to put it all in writing, because if it's not in your lease and it's not a state law, whoops. So make sure that you're, as you're going, if your tenants are doing stuff that you don't like and they're not correcting their actions, make sure that you're taking a note. Make sure that you're keeping track of what your house looked like before and after. Make sure that you're keeping track of like doing inspections of going through. We have a really exciting treat for you, for everybody that makes it to the end of this webinar. So as you're going through and you're documenting your house condition, it's very important that you keep this in mind, because this is going to help you if anything goes wrong. Gift giving. Okay, so when I started out 5 years ago, I did not believe in giving anything to like the tenants. Candy, wine, flowers. I'm like, this is a professional relationship. But the more and more I've gotten to it, you know how they talk about the carrot or the stick? So I feel like a small something. So for my business this year, I'm going to seize candy and I'm going to give like a $20 little box of chocolates to my tenants. Just enough because they're the ones that are giving me referrals, they're taking care of me, and I want to just say thank you. I will report back next year and say that if that's a bad thing or a good thing, but you know your tenants. Do you want to open that line and keep it going? Like, we had a pair of tenants that were honestly, I thought they were amazing. They're with us for 3 years. They were great. Well, after they moved out, we found that no call was not a good contact. They had a little leak that they didn't take care of. They didn't change the AC filters, so not changing $4.50 filters cost me $800. Of course, the day after I gave back the security deposit. So what you want to be keeping track of is what conditions it is, what kind of contact with your tenants. Are they the tenants that you really don't want to hear from them for 3 years? Or by doing so, will a $4 fix go to a $10,000 mistake? Think of moss, think of AC and filters, and so forth. So I mentioned it a whole bunch, preparing your lease. So if you're right now and like, geez, Elizabeth, I'm at month 4, I'm in month 5, I'm in month 9, I can't do anything. That's okay. In your notes section on your computer, make sure you're keeping track of all of this. This is the time to be like, oh my gosh, I have a fireplace. Do I require them to do a cleaning? Do I provide the cleaning? Do I have a backup? This is the time to write down everything. This is the time to be doing regular inspections. And by regular, I mean like every 6 months to a year, guys. Let's not go overboard. Our tenants also need to live in their place. But this is the time for you to keep track of all of this stuff. And remember, check back with us in a second. I have a handy dandy little thing for you to keep track of all of this information. Let's discuss the importance of a lease. Remember how I just talked to you about how like I left those nails up? Well, this is where you can write down what you want. I was just speaking with someone today and she was talking about how she had to remind her tenants to make sure that they flush out the outside water spigot. This is the time to make sure that you put all of that in writing. Yes, it's great to do friendly reminders, but if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So when you're going through and you're like, oh shoot, I should have done X, Y, and Z, make sure that you're keeping track of all of these things. Make sure you're updating the lease. We have a really exciting announcement about the lease at the end of this, but this is the time to continue to work on your lease. Personally, I do very little on my lease at the end. So like when I'm all ready and I'm scheduling a new tenant, my lease is ready to go because I've spent the previous 12 months putting my lease together. As issues are coming up, I'm putting it in. I have an 18-page lease and it covers all of this. One of the things I remember a professor, he was old and gray and had been doing this for way too many years, say 30. And he literally had like a book on his syllabus. He was like, if it's happened, it's in there. And you know, it kind of gave us a really good idea of where he's coming from. And I think of that as my lease. This is your operating guide. This is where I go through and I explain everything. And honestly, yes, I think people get overwhelmed. But my tenants at the end get a very clear understanding. And I think in all of my years, if memory serves me right, I've had 2 people walk away from my lease. And honestly, I'm thankful they both walked. Because the stuff that they got upset about, why do you pay for sprinklers? Well, because people break them. And you can break the sprinklers outside and they cost a fortune to keep replacing because they're $4 sprinklers, but they cost $25 an hour to get someone to go out, plus, you know, the trip fee. So this is where you put everything in your lease. And if someone has an issue with it, sit back and be like, are you okay? I remember someone like really hated my break lease fee. And I was like, no, I'm not taking that out. Sure enough, 3 months later, they broke that lease. So that is why you really want to make sure that all of these issues we're talking about, the plumbing, the moss, all of that is in your lease. If it's not in your lease now, no big deal. Call your tenant, make sure this maintenance stuff is happening, but then take our lease. Take the Easy Learner lease. Start updating it now so you're not remembering all of these things in the middle of summer when, you know, your house always turns right in the middle of your vacation, right before, a big illness and right after a big project at work. It's always how things happen. So start working on these documents, keeping track of it all now. This is the time to make sure that everything is ready to go. You could make alterations like your maintenance and repairs. If we didn't follow it, so like you didn't talk about your moss, you didn't talk about your decorations, you forgot to mention that they needed to drain the lawn system, or sorry guys, changing weather over here. Or you did do all of that, but your tenant isn't picking up the phone. I had a friend who kept calling and calling and calling, and they ruined her sprinkler system because they didn't let the people come out and blow out the system. Well, in my lease, it says that every time you don't answer a contractor, it's $100. Guess how many times my people don't answer their phone? 0. So it's very important that as you're running through these difficulties, make a list. The best thing I have ever done is worked on my lease, made the alterations today so that tomorrow when I have that lease turn, it's ready to go. That's not a concern of mine. Fireplace, don't forget that fireplace fires are very, very predominant and happen a lot. So if you don't have it in your lease about the fireplace, make sure you grab this addendum, because you want to make sure that you're covered so that if something does happen, everything is covered and that nothing happens. Renter's insurance. So I'm sure you all know that a bunch of hurricanes happened. The Tyndall Air Base got destroyed. We had Fayetteville, North Carolina, like all of that happened. And a lot of people are running into issues with not having renter's insurance. I, in my lease, just like here, require it to be of all my tenants, because if something happens, my insurance only covers the house. And I don't want anybody to be like, but my car got destroyed. Why isn't the landlord paying for it? That's what renter's insurance is for. So as you guys are going through this, make sure that you're covering the renter's insurance and reminding people, if anybody asks you, that that's why they're required to have insurance. So if something goes wrong, the fireplace, you have a leak or something happens, that you are covered. Because as much as you try to blow out the systems and make sure nothing freezes, stuff happens. That's why there's insurance. I'm super excited to have you all. We have some amazing treats that Erica is going to discuss with us shortly. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you guys next month.
So we might as well just use yours. So we will, again, I wanted to make the announcement that if you purchase your 1-year account today, you will get an extra year in return. And then while Elizabeth was talking, we did send you our free periodic inspection list. This is a really great form. I don't know if you mainly rent out in the summer, and now 6 months have passed and it's time to go in and make sure everything looks and is working properly, that there's no leaks, that they're changing filters, that there's there aren't overloaded outlets. This is a really great form just to make sure everything is as it was when you first rented out the property. So Dan will actually send you guys that form right in the chat box, and you can download it. And now we can open up for Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat box. And if we don't get to your question, you can always contact our customer support. You can use the chat box at the top right of the page on the website, or you can email us at support@ezlandlordforms.com. Again, we thank you guys so much for joining us today. And make sure you sign up for our November webinar. That's on November 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, well, it looks like we don't have any questions for today. So we thank you guys so much for joining us. Feel free to sign up for that webinar for next month, and we can't wait to talk to you guys again.
See you next month.
Thank you.